Welcome to All Things Considered, where we rate movies not just on how they turned out, but also on how they got there. We score each film out of 10 in 3 categories: the quality of the movie itself, the behind-the-scenes drama among the cast and crew, and the film's production woes, from studio meddling to on-set disasters. And we average it all out for a final score that reflects both the film you watched and the battle it took to create it. Today we're taking a look at Suicide Squad, a film that was supposed to expand Zack Snyder's new DC cinematic universe by doing something fresh and unique, teaming up a bunch of villains. But after BVS came out, Warner Brothers got cold feet, recut the picture into a Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff, and forced reshoots that completely changed the tone of the movie. The end result was a film that neither the studio, the film's director, or audiences were truly happy with. So let's dive in and see how this movie truly scores with All Things Considered. Let's kick things off by taking a look at the film's production woes, because the shooting of Suicide Squad was an unmitigated, full tilt, total and complete breeze. It was fine. David Ayer, who wrote Training Day and had just finished writing and directing the brutal World War II tank epic Fury, largely was able to make the version of Suicide Squad he wanted to make. There was only one major shakeup before cameras rolled. He was ordered to remove Steppenwolf, the parademons, and rewrite the third act, where it would have been revealed that Enchantress was being controlled through a mother box, where she opened a portal to Apocalypse to prep for Steppenwolf's invasion. Ayer was told to cut this due to director Zack Snyder having very different plans for Steppenwolf in Justice League, resulting in Ayer having to hastily rewrite this a few weeks before production began. Regardless, after shooting wrapped, Ayer, working first with editor John Gilroy and then Lee Smith, editor of the Dark Knight trilogy and several other of Christopher Nolan's films, landed on a cut of the film that he was incredibly happy with. It contained no songs or music outside of Stephen Price's original score, and the story played out in a straightforward, linear structure. Ayer described the film as a soulful drama. While there were moments of humor in it, tonally it resembled Black Hawk Down, serious, grounded, and militarized. And the first preview for the film would reflect that, which Ayer and the cast screened for fans at Comic-Con. It was dark, gritty, and somber, with haunting operatic music playing throughout. Ayer claims that anyone who has seen this version of the film says it's one of the best comic book movies ever made. Now that's a bold statement, so what the hell happened? 3 letters. BVS. It didn't do so hot. It was panned by critics, it was criticized for being too dark, and it didn't make as much money as Warner Brothers expected. And I know what you're thinking. $800 million is a lot of money. Well, when you're pitting 2 icons like Batman and Superman against each other, the bar is at least $1 billion. Look at Deadpool and Wolverine, which pulled in $1.3 billion. So what does any of this have to do with Suicide Squad? BVS was being criticized for being too dark, and Warner Brothers felt that that contributed to its poor box office. The cut of Suicide Squad that Ayer had just delivered was, you guessed it, too dark. So the studio naturally began to freak out. Now, during all of this, Warner Brothers had released a proper trailer for the film. And no, not the somber sneak peek Ayer showed at Comic-Con. This trailer was tonally totally different than both the movie and that Comic-Con preview. It was funny, upbeat, had Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody playing throughout, and featured these colorful titles. It was at this point that Warner Brothers realized that they were marketing a very different film than the one that would end up in theaters. So to correct this, someone had the bright idea of just hiring the company that cut the trailer, the aptly named Trailer Park, to help recut the film. Hopefully I don't have to explain that cutting a 2-hour movie versus cutting a sizzle reel are 2 very different skill sets. And just because you're good at one doesn't mean you're good at the other. And to be fair, the trailer that Trailer Park cut for Suicide Squad was fantastic. They crushed it. But a trailer is not a movie. Under Warner Brothers' orders, Trailer Park, along with a plethora of other editors, were tasked with moving up the character introductions to the start of the film, showing everyone's origin and backstory. Whereas in Ayer's cut, these introductions happen as characters are naturally introduced in the first 45 minutes. A lot of the Joker's scenes were also cut, as was a romantic subplot between Harley and Deadshot. As for what was added, besides these gaudy trailer-esque graphics, were songs. And lots of them. Guardians of the Galaxy and their awesome mix of songs, mostly from the 70s, were a huge hit. So Warner Brothers said, let's take our team-up movie and just copy theirs. When they were finished, they had 2 radically different edits of the same film. So how do you figure out which one to release? Well, you let the audience decide. Warner Brothers would screen both cuts of the film for test audiences, with the idea that whichever one tested better would be the one they would release. Except a funny thing happened. They tested exactly the same, something I'm sure the Joker, if he were real, would find absolutely hilarious. So, yet again, the studio was left wondering what to do. They noticed, though, that test audiences like different moments from each cut of the film. So instead of doing the right thing and letting the director release his vision, Warner Brothers decided to take the highest scoring moments from each cut of the film, jam them together, and make a Frankenstein monster out of it. Not only that, but for a director, they ordered the most dreaded thing of all: reshoots. The reshoots weren't written by Ayer, but by Geoff Johns, who was co-running DC Films, in an effort to make a more lighthearted film and soften the toxicity of Joker and Harley's relationship. Ayer, for his part, was an absolute pro and directed the reshoots himself, saying he was hired to do a job and he did it, no matter how painful it was. The result would be a final cut that neither Ayer really liked nor the studio really liked, but in their infinite wisdom, the studio decided to release. And that's the version we all saw. So where does this land out of 10 for production woes? Reshoots are generally a part of big budget filmmaking. The question is whether they're requested by the filmmaker or the studio. Ayer had made the film he wanted to make, then was forced to direct new scenes he hadn't written, while watching a bunch of other editors recut his film into a Guardians of the Galaxy knockoff. However, throughout it all, he acted like a pro, did everything the studio asked, and stuck around to deliver the movie, even if he disagreed with the direction Warner Bros. Took the film. Because of that, I'm going to score this an 8.4 out of 10. It's not as bad as something like Solo or Justice League, where the directors were replaced, but it's still a clear case of a filmmaker losing control of his own movie. Now let's take a look at the film's behind-the-scenes drama, because while the Joker caused a lot of mayhem in the movie, Jared Leto's method acting made sure the cast experienced just a tiny taste of it in real life. On the first day of rehearsals, the cast learned that Leto had elected not to take part, which at first they thought was pretty messed up. Then there was a knock at the door, and in came one of the Joker's henchmen, who proceeded to throw a dead pig on the table in front of the entire cast. Viola Davis was horrified, while Will Smith proclaimed that Leto had gone full Joker. Of course, as we all know, you never go full Joker. Leto would give the cast, according to Davis, some really horrific gifts. He gave Margot Robbie a box containing a live rat, and while she screamed when she opened it, she ended up trying to match Leto's energy by keeping it as a pet. That is, until her landlord at the place she was staying at found out. Leto sent boats to Will Smith, which sounds pretty benign when you realize he also sent used condoms to him and various other cast members, plus anal beads and sticky Playboy magazines. Come on, man. Leto would later walk back these comments about the used condoms, claiming he was joking. Yet there's footage of his castmates confirming he sent them. The truth probably lies somewhere in between. If I had to guess, they probably weren't used condoms. But if they were, my god, man. Leto also cut 2 feet of hair off of Karen Fukuhara once he finally showed up to rehearsals. That's a lot, that's like this much. And then cut a chunk out of Margot Robbie's eyebrow on the first day of shooting. He also shaved his own eyebrows off for the role. On set, he never broke character and made people address him as Mr. J. Not Mr. J, Mr. with an A-H. Will Smith would later say he never even met Jared Leto, only the Joker, or Mr. J. However, Adewale Akinue Agbaje, who played Killer Croc, said the good thing about all of these disgusting gifts is it unified the actors against Leto as a group, which is allegedly what Leto wanted, explaining that the Joker is somebody who doesn't really respect things like personal space or boundaries. Sure it's not Leto not respecting personal space or boundaries? Just a thought. So where does this rank out of 10 for behind-the-scenes drama? While Leto's behavior was borderline, well, over the line if the used condom and sticky magazine stories are true, and obviously pretentious as hell, the cast did admit that seeing Leto's commitment to the role forced them all to up their game. Therefore, I'm giving Suicide Squad a 7.5 out of 10 for behind-the-scenes drama. Nobody really fought, and the set never turned hostile. Everyone just had to put up with one very pretentious method actor. As for the movie itself, it's not very good. But what is good is Margot Robbie. While Wolf of Wall Street introduced her to the world, this film, in my opinion, really cemented her as a megastar. Her character's look in this film has become iconic, and she completely steals every scene she's in. Fortunately, she's trapped in a bad movie that's a victim of too many cooks in the kitchen, each pulling the film in wildly different directions. Obviously, by cooks, I mean editors. And there were a lot of them on this movie. Seriously, like a ridiculous amount. I think like 6 to 8. Maybe more. The film swings wildly between a dark and gritty character drama to a neon-soaked music video, trying to emulate Guardians of the Galaxy. The end result is duct taped together in a jarring blend of styles that never fully click. And then there's the Joker. Reimagining him as a gangster to distance the character from Ledger's interpretation in The Dark Knight is actually a really interesting approach. And to be fair, Jared Leto is a great actor. I mean, the man has an Oscar for God's sake. But his Joker, ain't it? How can I put this nicely? It's like someone cringing while watching someone on YouTube do an absolutely atrocious Joker impression. I'm the Joker, baby. If you know, you know. The tattoos don't help either, especially damage stamped across his forehead, because why show us your characters unhinged when you can just write it on him? First rule of screenwriting, people: show, don't tell. Combined with these other tattoos, Leto's Joker ended up looking like a custom created character from a video game. It's bad, and unfortunately, a huge step down from Ledger, which people were naturally going to compare him to. However, the flip side of this coin is that the Joker was heavily promoted in the trailers, and one of the major reasons people flocked to theaters to see the film, only to find out that he was hardly in it. Obviously, we know now a lot of his scenes were cut, and after seeing the performance, maybe that's a good thing. Regardless, audiences still felt cheated. On its own, I give Suicide Squad a 6.4 out of 10. It's not horrible, it's just not very good. But when you take into consideration the tug-of-war edit the film got dragged through, combined with everyone having to deal with Leto's pretentious method acting, and his used condoms and whatever, all things considered, Suicide Squad manages to climb to a 7.4 out of 10. A classic, certified studio screw job. That's my score, now it's your turn. Let me know in the comments below what score you'd give Suicide Squad, all things considered. Thanks for watching, everybody, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more of Hollywood's untold stories and behind-the-scenes drama.